Tanya for the 21st of Kislev refers to the story. In the year 1894, there was a medical discovery by professors and scientists, and they discovered that there's an artery in the brain that, when triggered, whether a person looks up or downwards, will trigger either deep thinking or memory. And it was all the talk. Everyone was so fascinated by this discovery. And one of the relatives of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, was invited to eat by the Rebbe Rashab's house, and he was excited to tell the Rebbe Rashab about this incredible discovery. And when the Rebbe Rashab was washing his hands in the Netilas Yadayim, he came to the Rebbe Rashab to start telling him. The Rebbe Rashab, generally speaking, didn't even want not only not to talk, but not to even have his mind distracted while making a bracha of the Netilas Yadayim. And so the Rebbe Rashab motioned to him to not to interrupt him. And then during the meal, this man told the Rebbe Rashab about this discovery. And the Rebbe Rashab didn't answer him. And the whole meal, until after Birchas Hamazon, until after benching, the Rebbe Rashab didn't answer. And then, as soon as the meal was over, the Rebbe Rashab told everyone wait a moment. The Rebbe Rashab went into one of the rooms of his house, and a short while later, he came back with a handwritten copy, a small book written by the Mittler Rebbe, by the second Chabad Rebbe, the son of the Baal Tanya. And he opened it up, and he showed them over there, and the Mittler Rebbe describes in great detail an artery in the brain, and there's vapors that travel in this artery, and depending on which direction a person looks up or looks down, they'll trigger either deep thinking or trigger memory. And I mean, it was clearly written by the Mittler Rebbe far, far before the scientific discovery was made. And the Rebbe Rashab showed him, this is already written by the Mittler Rebbe. There was someone at the table, and they blurted out, and they had to have had a lot of courage, but they blurted out, if this is the case, if the Mittler Rebbe already wrote about this, then it must be that the Mittler Rebbe was a big professor. The Rebbe Rashab answered that he didn't know it because he was a professor. How did the Mittler Rebbe know? How did the Mittler Rebbe know it? He knew it because Adam Akadman, the supernal man in Shemayim, has such an artery. In heaven, such an artery exists. And therefore, he understood that down here it also exists as well. The Tanya yesterday, the Alter Rebbe asked a whole string of questions, essentially proving that the Tanya cannot be possible, and it's impossible to write a book like the Tanya that can equally be influential and inspiring to all people equally. And the Alter Rebbe proved it. Whether a person's mind is going to be confused, or whether his intelligence has shortcomings, or whether inspiration itself is wildly subjective, like we see that not everyone's able to be affected by the same thing unless someone's God or been given God-like gifts like Yeshua was given, that he can impact every single person. And we see even in matters of halacha, Beis Shammai will say the halacha is like this, and Beis Hillel will say the halacha is like that. You see the wild such subjectivity that exists even in matters of halacha. To say matters of the heart and matters of the soul, every single person could open the Tanya and be equally impacted, it's impossible. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe is asking the question, essentially, then why is the Tanya supposed to be a book to help and guide all people? It's an impossibility. And in today's Tanya, the Alter Rebbe is going to deal with that. The Alter Rebbe starts off the answer and says, I'm dealing with people that I know, each one of the people. In the countries of our nation and the Chassidim are nearby, we've had affectionate words of exchange in private audience. They've revealed to me all the hidden matters in their heart and their mind, in their service of Hashem, which is dependent on the matters of their heart. To them, these people that I've already spoken to me, these are the people that I'm writing back. And my tongue should take the form of a pen, a scribe's pen, something I could write. And these are the pamphlets called Lekutei Amarim. Melukatim b'fi Sfarim and b'fi Seifrim Kedosh Elin Shvasa Eitan and for some Mitzleinu. Compiled based on books and based on teachers as a tradition amongst Chassidim, that books is a reference to the Maharal and the Shalah HaKadosh, and teachers is a reference to the Maggid and the Baal Shem Tov. וקצת מהם נרמזים לחכימים ריגרס הקודש ברבצנו שבעץ הקודש תיבודם וצריכים במהר וימינו אמן. And some of these teachings, the wise, it's alluded to from the sacred letters of the teachers in the Holy Land of Israel, which is a reference to Menachem and Vitebsk. And some of these ideas are things I heard from them saintly holy mouths before they moved to the land of Israel. The Rebbe says, these are answers that I've compiled based on all the questions that come my way, using information from the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid, the Shalah, the Maharal, Menachem Vitebsk, and these are all based on information that was given to me. How I understand it is, the Rebbe is saying the information in my book is not just Torah or words of wisdom, it's data. I've spoken to so many people and I've collected so many different problems and information. So the reason why I'm able to address all people and any person could open the Tanya and understand this, because I've spoken to people. I'm not just coming up with theories, or I'm not just even pulling directly from Torah, and some people have this part of Torah that inspires them and that part of Torah that inspires them, and there's wild subjectivity, even what can help inspire a person. The Alter Rebbe says, I've just talked to so many people, collected so much data and so much information, and therefore, practically speaking, I'm able to talk to so many people because I've dealt with every different type of person, and therefore, my advice could cater to every type of person. Additionally, the Alter Rebbe said I don't have the time to talk to people, so that we have no choice but writing a Tanya. So you might say the Tanya doesn't address your problem, but I'm not able to deal with every single person. But it does deal with your problem. And also, forgetfulness is very common. Alter Rebbe says I'm talking to people, they walk out of Yechidus, this is very implicit from the words, and they're just forgetting what I'm saying. And therefore, it's much easier if I have a Tanya. They forgot what I said in the Tanya, no problem, open the book again and just read it again. Therefore, I have recorded all the replies to all the questions. A wild claim, but it's people have found this to be extremely true because people have their own problems and they found it in the Tanya. It should be preserved as a sign and reminder in people's minds. People don't have to push and press and fight to have a private audience with me. Because in the Tanya you could find tranquility for the soul and counsel for everything that's difficult in the service of Hashem. And then his heart can be firmly trusting in God, who has completed and perfected everything for us. Now, there's one challenge the Alter Rebbe brought to the Tanya in yesterday's Tanya that still presents itself, and that is, what about someone who has a weak mind? And when we say weak mind, it means he doesn't understand every single detail of the Tanya, which is very, very involved, or from the advice of the Alter Rebbe. And if a person goes into Yechidus, Alter Rebbe sees he doesn't understand it, the Alter Rebbe will explain it to him. But what about the guy that opens up the Tanya and says, I don't understand it? The Alter Rebbe understands that problem and says, all right, to answer that question, if someone doesn't understand what's written in the Tanya, he should explain this problem to the great scholars of his time, and they will explain it to him. And now, what if the scholars are not interested? The scholars are being too humble. The scholars say, we can't do this. And therefore, I'm requesting from these scholars, they don't cover their hands over their mouths, that they're going to conduct themselves with false modesty and false humility. Like it's known, the punishment for people that have food and withhold food. This is a reference to Torah. Someone that knows Torah and says, "Oh, I'm not good enough to teach Torah." Who are you to do that? And on the flip side, for these great scholars who help people out and explain the Tanya properly to them, the great reward for them, like the Rabbi say, Hashem is going to light up the eyes of both of them. The person that's been helped, obviously his eyes have been lit up, but the person who also helps, he says, this is information I already know. And Hashem says, I'm going to enlighten the eyes of both of them, both the person that was helped and the person that's the helper. Hashem will cause his face to shine on them, both people, the light of the countenance of Hashem. And the Alter is now finishing this idea with a blessing from Mashiach, and the one that gives life, Hashem, should grant for us the privilege to see the days when no person needs to help another person, because everyone's going to know the Hashem, and no one's going to have to ask questions in Torah, because people are going to know Torah intuitively, because the entire world's going to be filled with the knowledge of Hashem. Because the entire knowledge of Hashem is going to fill the earth like the sea of the water. Like the waters fill the sea, sorry. Amen, Ken Yatsin. So the Alter Rebbe answered the question very, very well. And now the Alter Rebbe is moving on to the second half of the letter of the Alter Rebbe, introduction to the letter. And the purpose of this is exactly the same purpose of the previous letters, to make sure that people understand they cannot copy the Tanya illegally for the span of 5 years, because it will do a tremendous financial damage to those two very great people that stuck their necks out in order to have the Tanya printed. Once these patterns would spread amongst the Nash, with many different copyists and people that were making duplicates of the Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says, now with all these copies, there's been a tremendous amount of errors. And therefore, and therefore the spirit of these noble men who were mentioned on the previous page, they were moved to have sacrifice and to have personal and financial effort. They had these pamphlets published, removed of any mistakes, and thoroughly checked. And I congratulate them on their worthy task and the worthy deed. The Torah is very explicit when it says, cursed be a person who goes into the border of his fellow. Now that means literally the field, but it also means where a person goes into the financially damaging another person. Cursing means both actual cursing and also an excommunication. Hashem should protect us. The Alter Rebbe using a statement from Kedushin, but it means like once it's actual law and Yehuda is adding onto it, it's an expression where the Torah already says something, but I'm coming to add an extra rule, even though Torah already writes it. To make a strict prohibition on all publishers that they shouldn't publish the Tanya not themselves and not through any agents. That they should not reprint the Tanya, not themselves, not through agents, for 5 days, without the permission of those two people mentioned on the previous page, for the span of 5 years from the time when the Tanya is printed. And those that are pleasant, those who listen, should be blessed with goodness, which again is a blessing for us because we're listening, even though many years have gone by. These are the words of the compiler of the Tanya mentioned earlier, and that's the actual introduction for the Tanya. And tomorrow, God willing, we're going to begin the actual Tanya itself, starting from chapter number 1. Thank you so much for joining. The Tanya is Ilay Nishmas. The Tanya is Ilay Nishmas. Sorry. Aaron ben Avram, Esther Basra, Moshe Menachai, Yisrael, David, Shimon Bas Peres, Chasvim, Hashem, Nerezi, Echach, Chasvim, Dayi, Ben Achman, Gudai, Le'elion, Moshe ben Avram, Sarah, Miriam, Bas Chaim, Ben Yamin, and Chaim, Mishka ben Shimon Avram and Fushlam for Yaakov and Aaron Ben Asbat Caleb Chaim Shaberach Ben Gadam and Shabenesim and Ahmed Ben Adel Lebas Yana Mesh Ben Mina and Shubakar for Yehuda Ben Rivka and anyone else needs to show some success of all the Jewish around the world, especially the success of the soldiers who defended the Jewish people and the speedy coming of Mashiach. A wonderful and very successful day. Thank you so much for joining.